Joining us online, please welcome Professor Wrobel.
See both myself and the slides. I'm very happy to be here in this exciting auditorium as Gaia-X plays an important role in what AI can do for Europe these days. So let me share just very briefly my thoughts on what we can do to actually make Europe come ahead in the arena of artificial intelligence. I am actually coming from an institution that is performing research on machine learning and artificial intelligence. You see our partners down here, Fraunhofer and universities join forces together to embark on the path to excellence on AI. So basically, my message to you is starting not with research, but with the situation that we see globally. And the talks that we've heard already have already highlighted this. When we look at the international situation, we see that things look quite crowded actually. So we've got a lot of logos here on that slide. The big logos show the big elephants in the room who are serving AI to Europe these days. We've got a number of small logos here, and we see there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of space for European AI in all of this, despite, of course, some hopeful startups that we have right now that are growing like Mistral. And so what is the situation then? What can Europe do? How can we proceed? Actually, this situation is something that companies have also noticed. And we've had some interesting surveys in Germany recently, a big company survey, where we companies think about the situation in AI. 84% of companies that are using generative AI would actually prefer to have European offers as an alternative to what we find now internationally. So an interesting point, well, can we pull this up? Is there an opportunity for us to actually do this? And it turns out there actually is. And the reason for that is something that most of you probably are aware of. Where's the opportunity coming from? The opportunity is coming simply from the fact that the way current AI is built based on data that are largely generated from what we know as the public internet. You see here the projections of the stock of public text and data usage, and we see that when we follow this line here on the slide, that basically the amount of data that we're using so far will be used up very soon. Some projections actually say this is going to happen in 2026 actually. So what that means is for the models that are being offered right now, currently, actually, they will run into difficulties further extending their reach based on these data. So we have a situation that the current way of delivering AI, largely based on the internet, is coming to an end, actually. The only one to say that, there have been a lot of observers basically saying that the AI revolution might run out of data, that the AI could be cannibalizing itself, that AI models, of course, will collapse when trained on recursively generated data. And this is exactly why I'm so excited to be here in this group of people, because we are all concerned with data and how we can use European data to the best value. This is exactly our opportunity in the world. When we look at the situation, we see, and even the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, has stated that very, very openly, that Europe's data treasures are our chance to build the next generation of artificial intelligence for the world. Because we have all these industries, we have all these companies and corporations who have loads of data, and these data are not on the public internet for good reason, but they could be used stemming from data spaces, stemming from something perhaps like Gaia-X, manufacturing it, and all the successes that have already been mentioned here. If we could pull those into AI models, we could then proceed on the path to building not only verticals for Europe, but potentially, because these data are so different from what is used right now, build an AI that is next gen, a better AI that could be actually something that we as Europeans offer to the world, not to replace everybody else, but to make our place in a world where alternatives are urgently needed. So, if we are planning to do that, what is needed? a number of things. I'm, of course, urged two perspectives. The first, surprisingly, will not be research, but it will be what politics actually needs to do to make this happen. Let me just briefly report, we had the French message before in the little video, but we actually synchronized very strongly with France starting in January this year. The people you see here is the French-German IAIS, the executive dialogue, but let me point your attention to the lower right part of this image down here, what they have asked for. And this is a message that we all should send to politics as strongly as possible, because even though we're on our way, a lot of these things are still missing. I'm not going to read it all out to you in the interest of time, but of course, what they have been asking for, we have 30 major corporations, there are also startups, is that things must get simpler. We also heard this already from Bernardo Correa, the Portuguese Secretary of State. We need a unified European capital market, not really a question for research, but one for politics. And we then should focus on making these applied language models. So this is basically the message that we started here, and you can all read this document on the web if you're interested. Fortunately, in the time between, many things have happened. So what I'm showing here is just a brief summary of what the European Data Union Strategy is trying to achieve. I'm sure that, especially in this audience, most of you are aware of this, but it's still interesting to have a brief look at that, because the objectives and the benefits are just in line with what this group of people certainly believes, that the availability of high-quality data is paramount to success. We need to simplify, and we need to bolster the European standing with respect to international data flows. And perhaps the benefits are obvious to all of us, so let's look at the priorities. Scaling up access to data for AI. This is what we want to do. We want to simplify data regulation, and we want to, of course, protect our sovereignty. So this is just in line with what Gaia-X has set out to do and is doing in this world. Just as importantly, and I'm quite happy about this, is that just yesterday we had the press conference on the digital simplification package, on the digital omnibus initiative, where also the AI is not only going to be delayed, but we're going to be using this time for actually making better plans for simplifying things, particularly for SMEs, and that we have. Politics should not actually forget research in all of this, because it is research and technology that will actually make the AI that will then help companies to survive and thrive. So let's then have a brief look at what research can and should do, and where we are in research and delivering this. If politics delivers, can we also as researchers? And I think we can. What is important in understanding what research needs to do? The important point is that we must understand the role of pre-trained models in building these verticals. So that's why I have these arrows here on the slide. We see on the left-hand side the pre-trained model. And of course, what we're going to be doing when building verticals is we're going to be continuously pre-training, we're going to be fine-tuning, we're going to go into domain reasoning in small models. But the key message is, to do all of this, you need the pre-trained base model first. Otherwise, you cannot do all of this. And obviously, the pre-trained models that we can currently sometimes download from Hugging Face are not going to be there forever. So we actually need a strategy in research that combines work on a unified model, that combines the strength of a large foundation model with these verticals. It's these two things that we actually need to do. This is actually what is our strategy at the Lamar Institute and Fraunhofer. So we've pursued this path for the past 3 years to be doing that. Let me just briefly share with you that this has been a road already with so many German and European partners. We can only do these things together. I'm not going to read out all these projects here where so many partners have been working with us to do all of these things together, but obviously this enormously helps, and this is a path we should be continuing. Based on these collaborations and projects, and and insights. We have been able so far to build up a technology stack that covers all of the components necessary to train these huge models and make them work in practice. So this is not only, as you see here in the leftmost column, the machine learning tech stack, but it's also data, and it's also access to computing power and the knowledge how to use that. What can you do when you have these things? Well, you can actually train models, and we have been doing that. And in December 24, we released the Toykan model as a proof of work of this technology stack and the data we've been collecting, and it is competitive in the 7B class. And of course, right now we're on track for training larger models with even more power. This is the first part that I was mentioning, the basis of all of the work. The second part is the verticals. And let me just give you one brief example of what we can actually do. When we have the spaces for specialized models, this is something we've done in the vertical of financial auditing. Okay, it's called ADM, which is Automated List Inspector, and it's a specialized model for the domain of financial auditing. And this specialized model is based on fundamental models that we built and then adapted to the domain. And it is so good that it's rolled out internationally now in very, very many countries across the 5 continents with our partners PricewaterhouseCoopers. And it actually won an award as International Digital Innovation of the Year because it saves almost 50% of work time and still allows trustworthy decisions in auditing. So this is what you can do in research and development when you're following this path from strong foundation models to these domain-assisted models. So how can we continue that path in the future? What is important here for us? The question, of course, is how do we go on from here now? This is the message I would like to be leaving with you. Obviously, right now, it will be important that Europe is using the capacity that hopefully will be created in the gigafactories to actually go this path of going from strong foundation models to these verticals. So I'm really hoping that we will be strategically using the resources and not making them disappear in a lot of uncoordinated small projects. I'm also hoping that the data prerequisites will be created for all of this by strengthening the current initiatives towards data spaces and merging them with the kind of data we actually need for AI. Even more, I'm also hoping that initiatives like AI on Demand will continue to thrive, a platform that already right now links up all the European activities for artificial intelligence. And if you're not familiar with that, let me just briefly show you the advertising slide here. It's projects Deploy AI and AI for Europe. Well worth looking at that. You see the web link down here. But of course, the main ingredient and the final ingredient that I would leave you with, and a beacon of hope, I should say, for what we can do in Europe is what's happening now in Europe in sync with international people with the open source sovereign foundation models. Because this is the research we need. We need to continue the path that I'm showing here of collaboration of all the parties, a coalition of the willing to create these models and do it together. And the good news is, and that's my final slide, we just had a workshop where really most, I should say almost all of the European players were there, were working on open source models. You see some of them here. And the most important thing is down in the bottom. You see there the declaration joining forces for AI sovereignty. So what should I say? If we can pull those things together that I suggested, then certainly, I know the data community is ready, but I can assure you the research community and the development community for foundation models is also ready. They have shown that in Berlin. So why don't we go? The future is bright, and I think we can pull this off, create a new kind of AI that will nicely complement what is there now from other parts of the world. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Professor, for your words.